Welcome to Flam Flam Sports. My name is Richard Harris, and let's talk sports. Welcome to Flam Flam Sports. My name is just simply Richard Harris. Instead of boring you with a full draft prognostication as I'd love to do, as I've done for years, I want to speak to you about one team and as a fan of that one team. That team is the New York Football Giants. Every year, draft time comes about. As a Giant fan, as a college football fan, I watch every game possible. I watch the Pac-10. Amen. I watch what's the Pac-12 now? The Big Ten, SEC, the Big 10, the Big 12, the American Conference. I watch every game. I even watched one AA games to see what talent is out there. And every year, as a Giant fan, I watch the NFL season. I watch the Giants play. And every year, I feel the same way as I do at the end of every year with the Giants. Even if we win the big game, which we've done several times, we lose in the playoffs, I sit back and I always wish my Giant football team was more exciting, was more interesting, was more dynamic, was more explosive, was more creative. I wish they had the 49ers of the 80s offense, the Miami Dolphins offense of Marino. I wish they had the intricacies of the Cowboys offense, where when the Cowboys needed 10 yards and a first down, they would run the same post pattern with Michael Irvin. I wish so many things about the Giants. And every year, the Giants draft some player who makes me always ask myself, why? Now you say, what do you mean, what? It makes me always ask, why? I watched Eli Manning play in college. He wasn't that good. I watched a game where the final score was 56-55 Eli played in. And I was just like, he's just a good quarterback. He wasn't first overall pick worthy, but he was, and he's won us 2 rings. I watched Rodney Hampton in college. Rodney was a beast in college. And the Giants had the counter trade they would run with him, and it worked all the time. He was awesome. I watched them draft Derek Brown, the tight end from Notre Dame, who in college, he used to get down the field, catch passes like a receiver. He was going to be the Kellen Winslow of the future. Now, we had Mark Bavaro, who no one had heard of. They just knew he was tough. The obvious answer, the greatest draft pick the Giants ever had, was Lawrence Taylor. I never heard of Lawrence Taylor until I saw him play in the NFL. I saw Carl Banks. Saw him play Michigan State. Wasn't that impressed. Odell Beckham Jr., I was really impressed, but he was always hurt in college. And LSU always underachieved. Excuse me. So now we're at a point with the Giants where we have a quarterback who's now been in the league for almost a decade. We have one of the top 3 receivers in football in Beckham Jr. We have a tight end in Larry Donnell who is usable, serviceable, can block, can get down the field. We have a running back core that no one seems to take over. Victor Cruz, we went to the same college, so that should tell you all you need to know. But he became a star. And he's coming off injury, but he says that he's ready to roll this season. We have 100 defensive linemen, none of which can play other than JPP, but he only has one hand. We have a defensive backfield led by Prince Amukamara, who he gets hurt at least once or twice a year, misses games at a time. And we ask ourselves, as Giant fans, why can't we make a splash pick once in my lifetime? Why can't we look at the board and say, the best player in this draft is who? That would help our team. We have the 10th pick in the draft. The one thing this team has built its championships on, the 4 that we have been built on the running game. Have been built on either a big back in Rodney Hampton, Otis Anderson, or a small back in Joe Morris. Now, Rodney Hampton didn't win a Super Bowl championship with the Giants, to my recollection, so he may not be fair to throw in there. But they had Brandon Jacobs, actually, in the other 2 championships that we had. He was a big back from Auburn. So why can't we take a flyer, take a chance, and say, why don't we draft a Heisman Trophy winner named Derrick Henry? Why let him sit out there for a round and a half? Because money-wise, they don't want to pay him big bucks. But he played in the toughest conference in football, the SEC. He just won the national championship running all over Clemson, running all through Michigan State, which people thought would be difficult to do. He played last year in an Ohio State loss. I mean, my point is, there's so much tape on him to watch, and he would be a perfect Giant. Because we can't keep thinking that we are the Cowboys, that we are the Eagles, that we are the Washington football team. We can't keep thinking that we are Seattle, Arizona Cardinals, the Packers, because we could throw the football a little bit. Because we have the stud receivers to make plays. This draft is going to be known for being, in my opinion, the draft that puts teams that are close. This is a draft that some teams, at least 5 teams in my opinion, if they pick intelligently, will draft a player, and within 2 years, that player is going to help them contend for a championship. Let me give you a perfect example. Cincinnati's going to draft probably a receiver. A.J. Green needs help. Andy Dalton needs help. And they need 1 year to learn the league, and then next year be a superstar. Someone like Treadwell, someone like the kid from Notre Dame. All he does is get open and catch, makes big plays. Or the kid from TCU, Doxson. I think the Giants should draft Derrick Henry in the first round. and they get offensive line help some point throughout the rest of this draft and go back to being who they are. I think a team like the Cowboys, if the Cowboys can draft Ezekiel Elliott, yes, they signed the dude from the Redskins the other day, but somebody who has got home run power, someone who can get a handoff, make one guy miss, and go 80 yards, and people not even be in the picture. Or to get Jalen Ramsey, who will have 10 years, 7 years of trying to cover Odell Beckham, trying to cover Deshaun Jackson, trying to cover the receivers in the NFC. If he goes to the Cowboys, he might get picked by the Buccaneers. Like, their players aren't superstar players in this draft, but they're players who are just plain, simple, good football players that are going to play. And I think the first 2 rounds, these guys will be plugged into whatever team they go to immediately. I know that sounds crazy, but all the mock drafts I've seen, every single person of the 31 players taken in the first 2 rounds are all players who will play next season or this season. Even the quarterbacks will play. And I just think that it's time. In my life, I remember when Leonard Hess was the owner of the Jets, and he said I'm an 80-year-old man. I would like one time to have some enjoyment of watching a football team that I own. And he's right. I'm a 48-year-old man. I want the Giants to do something shocking. Shock the world. Make a pick that'll have everyone talking about it the next day. Pick the running back who was the best player in college football last season. And then after that, get your linebacker of the future. Then you're the offensive lineman of the future. You've spent a ton of money in the offseason picking up all these defensive linemen, all this defensive talent. You need a running back to keep this team the way that I love this team. This kid, Darren Lee, I keep seeing on all these mock drafts going to the Giants. It don't matter how good he is. The best player in college football last year was Derrick Henry. You have a chance to draft him. Shock the world, G-men. Don't do the predictable thing. You do that every year. Sick of tight ends, sick of offensive linemen, sick of defensive linemen. Get me somebody who can play now. They have 18,000 running backs who stink. None of them can take the ball and be the guy. None of them have done it already. Williams out of Boston College was supposed to be that guy. It's 3 years now into the job. He still hasn't taken the ball. The running backs get hurt all the time. Freak injuries. Pick a guy who can get the football and barrel the NFC East over and get us back to where we belong. That's all I'm asking. Make this man's life. Make this old guy, this true Giant fan, make his day. That's all I'm asking.